World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Good morning. Welcome to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I hope you are staying warm as we all struggle in this terrible weather to try to keep our act together, keep our cars running, keep our houses warm, keep our dryers running. How you doing, Stephanie?
Good, except my dryer bit the dust this weekend. It was sad. And you had car trouble.
Oh, yeah, but I've got a shout out. I've already got a winner nomination. I got a number of those related to my diesel truck problems. My ongoing diesel truck problems, producer Hannah. How are you this morning in her stocking cap?
I'm doing all right.
Catch Hannah in her stocking cap.
In her Carhartt stocking cap.
It's a new trend.
Yeah.
She's got her Carhartt on, yeah. John, how you doing? Car's running, house warm, everything good?
Made it here. The house isn't too warm.
Yeah.
It could be a lot warmer, but,
Here we go.
So it goes, right?
We're ready to go.
If
Oh,
you
boy.
have not pulled up the video.
I'm ready to go.
Oh.
We're doing the house. There we go. I think I'll see patients like this later on today. What do you think?
I think they give you a pass today, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
I get a break, don't I?
But we're complaining, and what's the current
my
temperature in Iowa? I mean, I think they said at the start of the caucus it's supposed to be -5.
No, and wind chill's like -25, -30. But we'll see. I mean, Donald Trump says that people will walk over glass, shattered glass, to vote for him. So we'll see how that goes tonight. Of course, this is Martin Luther King's birthday. The schools are off, government offices. I think, city, state, everyone's
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My state worker only reminded me like 42 times over
rubbing
the
it
weekend.
in.
Yes.
Yeah,
Don't
so
you
what
love
does he...
those smart aleck state workers?
I know. Gotta rub it in. What does he do on a day off when you're working? Is he doing honeydew projects? Is he doing
Well, hopefully he's cleaning the
Brandon
house.
projects? Oh, okay. Well, didn't you give him projects to do? I mean, mop the floor, clean the,
I gave him some suggestions on things to do. We'll see what he chose.
you're
to
He's
do.
sliding.
playing video games. At least part
Probably
of the day.
sleep if he knows what's good for him.
And
Well, he planned to play video games all day, and then there was a mishap Friday night. So
Uh-oh. Well, we have a busy day today. Of course, we continue to keep our eye on things going on in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Israel, Gaza. We have a guest at, and you may or may not know him, but Kurt Jefferson is his name. He was formerly at Westminster College here and quite prominent, one of the legendary Teachers of the Year kind of award winner. He's now at Spalding University in Kentucky, and he's really a global global security guy from the United States perspective. So he'll try to help us unpack what's going on in the tinderbox that we call the Middle East and beyond. Scott Faughn, of course, will be with us at 7:10. Kurt at 7:35. And then Bob Onder, Senator Bob Onder, who is, former Senator Bob Onder, who's running for lieutenant governor and rumored to be considering Congressional District 3, will be with us at 8:35. And he's on the ground in Iowa.
Yeah, he tweeted out yesterday, just landed in Iowa. It's super cold, and he had some neat pictures up on his Twitter if you want to follow along today. But yeah, he's going to be joining us at 8:30. Be interesting to see what, people on the ground in Iowa are actually saying, because we hear a little bit from the mass media, but and they say everyone's all in for Trump, but I think that's what they want. And so I'm interested to hear, is there any more momentum for some of the other candidates?
Latest polling, and Brian Hauswirth joins us. You made it here okay, Brian?
Yeah.
Everything good?
Yeah, I think to Stephanie's point, thank you.
Weather continues to dominate here and in Iowa.
Well, it does. And I do have something I want to say because we had a pretty big story over the weekend, coupled with the weather, no doubt. But to Stephanie's point, you bring up a great point, Stephanie, about the weather, because I talked over the weekend to State Representative Danny Bussell from up in Newtown. And he's near, basically his district is the Missouri-Iowa border, and I know it's higher than that, but this weekend, Danny Busick, he had 12 inches of snow on the ground in his district, 12 inches. I'm not talking about at one time, that was as of Saturday, 2 to 3 feet drifts. So the folks going up to Iowa, imagine Hannity's been doing his shows talking about that. But Republican voters, especially in that state, get out to vote. But boy, you got to be motivated to go into that. Randy, you ask about the weather.
Yeah.
Take a look at this picture, KWS.com, 939theeagle.com, to give you some idea what the firefighters in Boone County and Columbia had to deal with. They dealt with a fire in the snow, and they dealt with what I've never heard this. They told me they dealt with a blowtorch effect.
Yeah.
And you will see this house on 939theeagle.com. Well, there's nothing left of the house. 2 cars, what's left of them, they're iced up. That tells you what we dealt with. The 5th coldest Sunday ever on that day in Columbia history. Our wind chill yesterday in Columbia, which has the official observation station, got down to 36 degrees. Still under a wind chill warning. No school closings today, primarily because the MLK Day holiday. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But, boy, we had a rough weekend. And those firefighters, one of their helmets actually froze full of ice.
I walk by that house every day. That's in my neighborhood. And, I mean, the house is decimated.
It's gone.
It was sort of a rustic finish, rustic type of planking on the outside and the exterior. Beautiful setting by a little lake there, and just it's an older neighborhood, a late 80s neighborhood. I don't know when that house was built, but young couple, and the dramatic story that you'll have on the eagle.com website, and I guess also KWAS?
KWS.com.
Yeah.
The young couple ran out into the snow and ice
in their bare feet
in their pajamas. They had no coat on.
In a neighborhood.
Thank goodness for the family dog, we understand.
Yes.
Wow, that is awful.
It's awful.
Well, Brian, it's a Monday, so we want to give people some good news. You said it was an awful weekend, but we did pick up a Chiefs win.
That's right.
But while you're here, I want to ask you, because Patrick Mahomes' helmet cracked, and you've covered football for what did you just celebrate at Learfield?
25 years doing scoreboards, but that's college.
Have you ever seen a football helmet shatter?
No, I haven't, and I've never seen anything. It's a great question, and some of the Dolphins fans felt like he got special treatment.
Yeah.
They did. No, I've never seen it, but I mean,
Randy, did you ever crack one of your leather helmets back in the day?
No, but I have a fur helmet on today. It's not going to crack. It may
That's
rip.
what
We'll have to see.
Mahomes should have been wearing.
That's right.
On the
And
outside.
he couldn't get a good fit.
No, and Stephanie's asked a great question on that, because that tells you how cold it was. It was brutal. No, it was like throwing a missile that one of the football.
Well, fans were also posting photos of their beers that they were purchasing inside the stadium, and they were freezing and exploding basically before they could drink them, which is truly a shame when you think about how expensive that beer probably was.
I bet a beer over there is probably at least $10. I don't know.
Easily, I'm sure.
I mean,
now, I thought we could have some fun with. I got to thinking yesterday, because I already have a winner's nomination. Yesterday, I headed out. I had triple dosed my diesel. The ongoing troubles of Randy and his diesel in cold weather.
You just need to get rid of the thing.
I
You
love my
have better
diesel.
luck with an EV.
Wait.
It sounds like.
Wait, you love it?
I love it.
You're always griping about it.
Well, I'm the one that made a mistake when I put DEF in the fuel last year. Okay, so I triple dosed it with the anti-gel fluid, right? Mm-hmm. I thought everything was good. I let it warm up for 20 minutes. I headed out to church yesterday morning.
Good.
And I get a low fuel pressure, then low engine power, and I figured, this isn't good. So I limped to the AutoZone, and they told me that it was I need a fuel filter. So you can get the stuff can gel. The fuel can gel in a fuel filter, which hangs down right by the rail, right below the. And I figured, okay. So I headed over to the Firestone over on Conley, because I find out that they're open on
they
Sundays.
generally are.
And they weren't. They were closed. I head across right there across the Sam's parking lot, and it stalls. So I called AAA, and Kent, the towing guy from A1 Towing, fantastic job, was there in 40 minutes rather than an hour. And he's from Moberly. He listens to the program occasionally. So then he drops me off at the Business Loop Firestone. Manager Justin, the 2 diesel mechanics, Peyton and Josh, took care of me. They fixed the car. They put in new fuel filter and got me on the road again. So as I understand it, they were the only place open in Columbia on a Sunday, and I really thank them for that. So I want to give them a shout out. I bought them a pizza. Went over emails and bought them a pizza, because these guys were working their arses off. They were working hard.
And that's good to hear, because there are few, if any, shops open if you break down on a Sunday.
That's pretty unheard of.
The Walmart on Grindstone they do oil changes. Stuff.
Well, yeah, oil change, but I'm talking about for serious repair.
Yeah, that would be the.
You're right. I mean, the
only
Walmart
one.
does that, in fairness. But I stopped at Walmart first to see if they could do it, but they don't do that. So here, it got me to thinking, though. John, did your grandpappy ever say things like my grandpappy said, like, it's colder than a witch's body part?
Easy.
Did you ever hear it's colder than a well digger's arse? Okay.
Oh, my grandpa, who initially was a farm kid in Minnesota and Nebraska and worked on the railroad in Iowa. Yeah, that was his line.
So what other colloquialisms do we have? What other expressions? Have you ever heard of anything else?
Well, we keep hearing now about global warming, although, what kind of global warming are we? I mean, Jake Tapper the other day in that debate was mentioning global warming. We got the fifth record coldest day in Colombia.
Yeah.
But no, it's
colder than a. Have you heard anything else?
I have, but nothing I
Why
can.
Don't you can modify it, Brian.
Just nothing I can really share.
Would you have to go to confession?
I don't think it just not feel.
It's
appropriate.
locker room talk in all those sports rooms.
It's stuff I've heard over the years, but there is. And the other people we should give a shout out to, Randy. You mentioned the Firestone.
Those firefighters too.
The firefighters did a great job, and phenomenal. And they were literally trying to avoid frostbiting and frostbite and everything else. But yesterday, I noticed too the heating and cooling people, the Hy-Vee gas station down the road on Grindstone, their gas station lost heat. So their people were in there shivering, and there was a guy up on the snow and the ice trying to fit on the roof at the gas station trying to fix the heating.
Wow.
So people are it's really, really tough. And
we
need to get out of this.
We are being tested. But okay, and then later on, we're going to talk about the fact I am becoming enamored of this Taylor Swift thing. I heard a little bit yesterday on the news. Tony Dungy apparently is all poopy pants about it. Well, why can't we just talk about football?
All the dads, Brads, and Chads.
And I'm thinking this is the best thing that ever happened in this divisive, balkanized country to have some love. And she's grooving with the rest of the Chiefs fan. I don't think she was putting on an act. I think she was really into it.
She was singing "Friends in Low Places."
We've got some sound on that too. Yeah, we've got.
She even opened the window of their suite so she could see the game and was high-fiving the fans.
Yeah, I don't know. This is an American love story yes, it's public, but boy, do we need a little love in this country with all the divisiveness and hatred. So maybe on Martin Luther King Day, even if you think Taylor is just a distraction, you hardcore football fans, what's wrong with a little love? It's good.
Hannah and I have been talking about quizzing you, Randy, on your Taylor Swift knowledge. We might have to do that later.
I'll have to. Wait, can we do that later in the week? Well, I'll do
maybe Feel Good Friday.
I'll do an update on her discography because I know nothing about it. But I'm watching the story. I like the story. It's good. It's a good story, and it's good for young ladies to see that kind of a story, and young men to see that kind of a story. And I don't know. I like it. I think we need a little romance in this world.
Okay.
Well, it's a hookup culture, and it seems like we have a romance, a real American romance. That's good to see.
Are you implying that Travis and Taylor are not hooking up, are part of a hookup culture?
By hookup, I mean one-night stand kind of a hookup.
Okay.
That's all. I mean, they've got at least a 5-month stand, so that's good. When we come back, it's the Daily DC Rundown.
The Lord is completing us. We are not perfect. We need your prayers. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace. With that kind of support, we will move mountains and do Jesus' will. Stumbling all the way.
Time for the Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
And that's Fani Willis. Now, she hasn't really said anything since all of these allegations have come out, and we're still waiting to see what will be the outcome after we found out that she is, I guess, paying her romantic partner and now has been subpoenaed to appear in his divorce trial. And whether she will be replaced and how that might impact the timeline with respect to all of her allegations against Trump, yet to be seen. But she was saying, we don't need to be perfect, and you need to give us grace, and we all stumble.
Isn't that funny? She's not giving Mr. Trump any grace, is she?
Certainly not.
Wow, that's hypocrite with a capital H. What else is going on in D.C.?
Well, the caucuses are today in Iowa. It is super cold, which we have already acknowledged. Do you think it's a make or break night for DeSantis?
I think he has to perform. He's got to outperform Haley or he's in big trouble.
And what about Haley? You think if she gets third, it's a make or break? Because she's surging into New Hampshire.
Yeah,
right?
and apparently DeSantis is going to go straight to South Carolina for a day or so and then go up to New Hampshire. So this is it for him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Ramaswamy, I think he claims victory no matter what. I think I think no matter what percentage he gets, he's like, well, I overperformed what people thought I would.
He's not counting on this cycle. He's counting on next cycle. I'm pretty sure about that.
I think you're right. So I always say, like, it's like Christmas morning elections are. I just get so excited. And last night I was like, ooh, it's tomorrow. Even though, I mean, obviously, I think Trump right now is like somewhere around 50%, more than double anybody who's close to him. And so you kind of know what's going to happen, but really, people are kind of looking at the momentum and the percentages. How much does he win by?
The last poll, the Des Moines Register poll, has Trump at 48%, I think Haley at 20%, and then somewhere, DeSantis 16%.
Which 18%. I think is historic. I don't think anyone has ever been leading by 48%. Well, Congress for now might be avoiding a shutdown. Congressional leaders say they've reached a deal to avert a shutdown. They would have to vote by Friday. They say this will kick the can to March 1 and March 7, which we've been doing a lot. But we heard from our own Congressman Mark Alford here in Mid-Mo that he's not going to vote for another continuing resolution. We've heard from the House Freedom Caucus members that they do not want to do this. And so they will be, they are obviously angered, and what the actual vote will be is yet to be seen. But then you think about it, wasn't McCarthy, part of his downfall was compromising with the Democrats. And so they went through all that rigmarole. We spent 3 weeks without a speaker or whatever it was, had all of these votes, and now we've got Johnson. And aren't we back in the same place as we were?
Over the weekend, one congressman said he regretted the vote for Johnson, and another one, Chip Roy, says he's contemplating the motion to vacate.
So yeah, if this goes forward, do you think Johnson's actually in trouble?
I don't know. All I know is I'm going to watch Groundhog Day because I think we may be looking at that. It definitely.
Well, it's frustrating because we went through
let us not only recall Dr. King, but rededicate ourselves to the commandments he believed in and sought to live every day.
That's Ronald Reagan and Martin Luther King, the Declaration of Martin Luther King as a holiday. And boy, I tell you, isn't it ironic, gang, that here we are in a time when everything is 180 degrees opposite what Martin Luther King said. I'm going to play the Fannie Willis thing that we played a little bit earlier. This is Fannie Willis talking about why her time should be special. Okay, here we go.
Black women to be perfect and save the world.
We should not expect black women to be perfect. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace. So does that mean we should, unlike what Martin Luther King said, we should judge people by the color of their skin and not the content of their character? Black women get a special break because of the melanin in their skin? Is that what she's saying?
I mean, I think if she just said, like, we shouldn't expect anyone to be perfect, and we all stumble, I think what she did was more than stumble. I think it was a concerted effort around the rules and knowing violation of her duties to the public and the taxpayers and her client. I think it was, I think it goes far beyond stumbling.
That's Stephanie Bell. John Marsh joins us as well, of course, every day on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. And John, I wanted you to talk about what's going on at Lincoln University, because it may tie into this whole racial animus and division that it seems like since Barack Obama became president, things have gotten worse rather than better.
Well, a story coming out of Lincoln University, the president, Dr. John Mosley, is on paid administrative leave, and it comes after the suicide death of a top college official. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey was the vice president for student affairs. She took her own life. Our news partner, ABC 17, came up with a memo written by Bailey on the day of her death that basically laid out, I guess you could call them complaints over Mosley's leadership. And now we've got students and alumni up in arms, and they're not happy with the way the Board of Curators is handling it. So they're bringing in a third party to investigate personnel issues at the college. And for those folks who don't know, Lincoln University is an HBCU, a historically black college, and John Mosley is the first white president in the history of Lincoln.
So where did all the foment start? Did it start at the student level?
It sounds like it did, because from what ABC 17 was telling us, they said that the emails that Bailey had put out said that Mosley was, I think the word they used was overly controlling in the university, and got defensive with others on staff, tried to give them feedback. But yeah, we understand a pretty good sized group of students showed up outside the Board of Curators meeting over the weekend, and the board went into closed session, as boards do, to deal with personnel issues.
Sources told HBCU Buzz that the Vice President of Student Affairs, Antoinette Candia Bailey, who did take her own life, suffered bullying and severe mistreatment. Now, we're going to want to hear all sides of this story. It's going to be really important to hear, an objective investigation. And I think a lot of it will be determined by who's doing that investigation. Do we know yet?
No, they said a third party is what we were hearing. And, Steph, can't really weigh in, but, you know John Mosley very well. I know Mr. Bell worked at the university at one time.
Yeah, he did. And before the time of John Mosley, and I wish it had been during the time of John Mosley, honestly, because I think everything from I only have my own perspective. And from my perspective, I've seen, nothing but amazing things happening at Lincoln University since John Mosley took the helm. And I will say I met him when he was first hired to become the basketball coach, and he was so eager to get involved and be a part of the community and work with others. And he worked his way up to president. I don't think when he first came here he ever thought that would be his path. And seeing all of the positive things that have been going on and just the rise, I think, of Lincoln and the increase in enrollment. And it's been incredible, I think, his journey. And so, I'm sad for the entire Lincoln community. Obviously, any death, especially by suicide, is tragic. But also, sad for the Mosley family that, that this is all, it's turning out the way that it is.
It's
right?
just so tragic. Yeah.
And so,
great opportunity for some harmony, racial harmony in our own backyard here.
Yeah, and I see a little bit of division happening right now in the community, and I see a lot of calls, backing Mosley, but then, obviously I see on Twitter there's, a lot of talk from the students and from others in the, I think other students from around the country, even outside of the community. So it's a tough time, I think, and it was especially tough to happen this weekend, to kind of stir up over the weekend. It's tough.
Well, and you always have to wonder on these kind of things. I mean, the personnel, the labor situation in this country, our labor department, both in the state and especially at the federal level, makes it ripe for allegations that even though a firing may occur, or not a firing, a discipline or requests or interpersonal relations between management and employees and supervisors and subordinates, because I've been on the management side, I've also been on the subordinate side, and it's easy for people to unload some of their deficits and maybe some things that they need to look at in their personal improvement. I'm not saying that's what happened here. It's very easy these days, and as an attorney, it's just very easy for people to allege that it was about, discrimination. It was about, I'm a woman. I'm a different ethnic group. I'm a trans. I'm a whatever. The employment law tends to sometimes make that an easy out for people that otherwise need to toe the line and do what the boss says.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't know.
Like you said, there are two sides to every story, and it seems like initially we got one side of the story. I don't know that we've seen the other side. And John, like you mentioned, my husband worked there. There are a lot of people that are in that admin office, so I hope whoever does the investigation goes and talks to the people who worked with her every day, who worked under Dr. Mosley every day. And I think really the truth will come out. And I think there are people there who witnessed the interactions and who knew the culture. And I don't think, I think if there was something going on, those people would be witness to it. And I think if there wasn't something going on, they're going to say, How
long had he been the boss?
Oh, John, has it been 2 years?
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Well, it seems
couple at least, yeah.
It seems like an awful long time for things to simmer and then suddenly explode.
I don't know how long she had been there. I don't think she'd been there that long.
She was a more recent transfer to the university.
Yeah. And Hannah? Given it the way I've seen some of the protests unfold, producer Hannah being the chronologically junior member, though
the token young person.
No. But you are the boss here.
You're the closest one to the college classroom of any of them.
I mean, I think if you look at what's been going on across college campuses and the misbehavior of students, I take with a huge grain of salt, that I like one of those pink Himalayan rock-sized grains of salt, anything that the student body says. That's my default. I'm sorry, but based on the way most students in most colleges these days are acting, I don't know. What say you?
I mean, I can certainly see why you feel that way. There have not been great examples of, student ideals or student actions in the media, because the good stuff never gets reported on, right? It's always going to be the bad stuff.
Right.
Well, and that's why I found it shocking that that 48 people applied to succeed Cliff Smart at Missouri State. Because who in their right mind at this time would want to be a university? I mean, I've always thought that when I was in college, I thought that would be the coolest job ever. I want to be the university president.
Not
it's on my list. No, I really did. I was in the student government, and I thought that's a bucket list item. At some point, I'm just going to go be the university president, which isn't how that works. But I'm thinking, that is a tough spot to be in. And, we're lucky and I think are fortunate here in Missouri that I think we've got some really great university presidents, but we haven't always. And, if things are not going well, whether it be athletics or, your student body on your campus with protests and other things, as the president, you can take a lot of public grief.
Yeah.
You also wonder about management styles, because when I worked at Lincoln University, I worked closely with then president of Lincoln University, who was also the president of the NCAA and a former coach, Dr. Jim Frank. And his coaching style was a coach's, management style. It's like, hey, my way or the highway kind of thing. So, I don't know if Mosley's management style is like that, but it makes you wonder a little bit.
Well, we're just in a time when everyone is so hypersensitive. Everyone is like they're sunburnt. You touch me in the wrong way, and I mean verbally or, from a management standpoint. Yeah, how dare you do that? I'm going to HR. It's just we have this victim mentality. And I am not alleging that that's what happened with this poor woman. I mean, obviously she was severely mentally disturbed to do that, right? I mean, you have to get to that point. You don't know what was going on in her life, but I don't remember, John, you reporting or listening to this program or watching, hearing Brian's reporting, anyone else, anything about management problems at Lincoln University with Mr. Mosley. Maybe I just haven't had my ear to the ground enough, but this is the first I heard of it. And what a dramatic way for that to emerge if it's a systemic management problem. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. When we come back from Davos, Switzerland to Iowa caucus, there's a lot going on across the globe, and we'll talk about that at 7:10.
which allow everybody to see that the company is performing according to the ESG criteria.
Well, you wondered where the ESG criteria came from? It's from Klaus Schwab.
What did we just listen
From the
to?
World Economic... Show me the papers. Show me the papers. I'm Randy Tobler. There's Stephanie Bell. Wow. and John Marsh.
Yes, sir.
And Hannah,
Yikes.
the producer. Am I getting in trouble with... I'm doing all I can to get us thrown off of Facebook. And
Yeah, careful. Come on, man.
I mean, come on. The guy sounds like he just... Come on. This is the guy who founded the World Economic Forum, now in its 52nd year. They're meeting in Davos, Switzerland. All of the people, the multi-billionaire people that really think they know what's best, how to run our lives. And he talked about stakeholder capitalism and about the Great Reset. And what he means is that we should switch from return the shareholders' wealth like American capitalism runs, to make sure that the company is thinking about stakeholders, the community, and kumbaya. And that's where environmental and social and governance comes along, right? All the social justice things that have infiltrated and that are now, he talks later in this sound clip about metrics. We have to have metrics that corporations will be held to the standard. And we see how investment-wise, that hasn't worked out so well. Our own Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, and others across the nation have said, I'm not going there with my investments. Those companies, if they're distracted with those kind of obligations rather than making a profit for shareholders, not going to work out.
Yeah,
about Vivek Malik, the state treasurer, and coming out on board saying Missouri retirement plans shouldn't be investing in companies that have anything to do with China and the bad players in the world.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I know. The treasurer was on Scott Faughn's show this weekend, and he was saying, and Scott Faughn was referencing a conversation I believe he had with Congressman Luke DeMeyer, and they kind of got these bad actors and like China's game plan, and they said, yeah, the first thing we're going to do is seize all the money of the U. I mean, that's how we're going to get them.
Yeah,
and we we knew this. We knew this game plan, and it's like, how can we possibly, knowing that, how can we possibly continue to send them our money?
You're right.
Ridiculous.
Well, look, and people wonder why people like Donald Trump in the United States, like the crazy guy with the chainsaw, down there in South America, why populists are so popular. Because we, the people, are terrified of a few very wealthy, but a small group of very wealthy people determining how our lives are going to be run. Every time Klaus Schwab talks, we must institute the Paris Accords. Well, no, we don't. I mean, look at this. I mean, it's a disaster area what's going on. We talked about last week, Hertz is unloading 20,000 of their vehicles because no one wants electric vehicles. It's not ready for prime time. People like Klaus Schwab and the people meeting in Davos this week, they've decided that's what's good for us.
Who are flying their private jets all there.
Yeah, right.
But want you to drive an EV. Although it sounds like maybe you need an EV, Randy. Sounds like maybe you'd be better off.
In case you're just joining us, I had a diesel fuel filter gel up. Now, I knew better. You're supposed to change your fuel filter in a diesel before the winter comes so that it doesn't gel up.
Well, and I didn't really realize the impact of the cold on EVs, but it sounds like it's just devastating that like the charging takes longer, you don't get as far, and I've seen multiple reports on Twitter of people just freezing at the charging stations trying to get their car charged up and having to sit there. I mean, I hadn't, of all the bad things the reasons why I don't buy an EV, that hadn't really risen to the top, but now with it being as cold as it is, I'm like, oh, put that on the list as another reason.
Can I just say, this is my first winter in many years having a vehicle with remote start.
Yes. Nice, eh?
And it is very nice.
It is sweet. It is sweet.
I even, over the weekend, I say remote start. It starts from an app, which is kind of crazy.
Oh.
So I can't even start it from my keys. I start it from this app through Ford. But even over the weekend, a couple times, I was like, man, it's really cold outside. My car has sat for a couple of days. Maybe I should just remote start it just so... I know it's so good, and I just look out my kitchen window, and I'd remote start it and let it run for a few minutes, and, I mean, not even leave the driveway, but I've been very spoiled already.
Don't you feel guilty that you're belching all that carbon dioxide into the air, though, Hannah? I mean, come on.
No, not really.
Okay. Well, and Hannah and John, I can feel the energy in the studio because Stephanie is so excited because it's Iowa Caucus Day. So is Kim Reynolds, Governor Kim Reynolds, who has backed Ron DeSantis. Here's what she had to say about it.
I think it's going to be bad for President Trump if he doesn't come in over 50, so that, he's not meeting the expectations that the media and the polls have been putting out for the last several months. So if Ron can get close to that and President Trump is below 50, I think he's in the game.
He has to get over 50 just to win? I mean, if he gets 48, I think he still wins.
Well, and if you want to share your thoughts and predictions, it's posted on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page.
That's right. Joining us in just a few minutes, Scott Faughn, bringing us up to date on what's going on in Missouri politics. Don't miss it.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
7:08 as we continue to watch the weather. It's good. I mean, this is the last bad day. So if you can make it through this, tomorrow we're going to inch up into some positive numbers, we hope, here in mid-Missouri. And then after that, get a respite for a week or so. I'm Randy Tobler, along with Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Who's like a kid in a candy shop with the Iowa caucuses afoot. I mean, she's just so excited.
I love election days, anything to do with elections.
John Marsh, John Marsh, are you as excited?
No, I'm a guy. I think just from talking in-house this morning with our coworkers, they're like, well, what do you mean Missouri doesn't have a presidential primary? Music station people.
And then producer Hannah over there, we were talking about your hopes that it's at least a race, right?
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I think that Trump is going to come out on top, but I'm curious to see what the margin is between first and second place, because I have a feeling it's going to be closer than the polls are saying they will be.
Yeah,
did you see someone tweeted out this weekend that there was an event somewhere in Iowa and somebody came up and said, I've got a gift for DeSantis or whatever, and they handed him a participation trophy.
Ooh, snowflake trophy.
I did see that.
And Brian Hauswirth joins us as well. It's that time of the show and of the week when we talk with Scott Faughn, of course, publisher of the Missouri Times and host of This Week in Missouri Politics. And Scott, we should talk about caucus versus presidential preference primary in Missouri. It changes this year.
Well, I more think a caucus is like an electric vehicle and a primary is like an F-150 like I drive that doesn't freeze up.
Oh, okay. Well, you drive
every time.
You drive a gas.
Added bonus. I put so much carbon in the atmosphere. Yeah. Whoever's fault this freezing weather is, it is not my fault.
So yours is a gasoline, not a diesel-powered truck.
It's gasoline. It is specifically engineered by Ford to put as much carbon in the atmosphere as physically possible.
There you go.
Hoping that someday global warming will kick in and it'll actually get above zero.
Yeah. Well, real ranchers in mid-Missouri drive diesels, don't you know, Scott? But that's okay.
That is true.
We'll let you get along with your, okay, we're having a good man powertrain talk here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Hey, let's pivot to the legislature in Missouri. What's going on this week? What can we look forward to?
Oh, wonderful fighting, hate, and discontent. It'll be whose ego was bruised, what right-wingers' precious baby feelings were injured, and I'm sure they'll tell us all about it. The House will probably pass thousands of bills, mostly to do with guns and abortion, probably something to make sure gay people don't smile. No one will care except the media to make fun of them. The Senate will fight and hate each other. There will be a Senate hearing this week on this landfill. It's an interesting concept. There's in Jackson County, some folks are trying to put in a landfill, and oddly enough, they went through the laws in Missouri on a landfill are very lengthy and just take forever. But this group has put through all the laws. Now some folks that live around where the landfill will go want to come in and change the law again and try to block them. So there'll be a hearing on that. It's interesting. These right-wingers, they have all these rules about all these things about liberty and freedom, except you can't sell your property to China, Venezuela, Russia. Now you can't sell it to build a landfill. I tell you, it's going to take you have to get an index card so the government can tell you who you can sell your land to for long.
Scott, I want to
liberty, right?
Scott, I want to push back a little bit on that. I understand what you're coming from, but that landfill is so controversial that you've got Emmanuel Cleaver and Mark Alford, who don't agree on almost anything, that are in agreement. But is that landfill potentially, could that play a role in the state Senate race out there between Hawks and some of the others out there? Is that going to be an issue?
Yeah, I mean, look, the truth is, while Republicans say they're for property rights, well, except in these 7,000 cases where they're not for property rights. And the truth is, Rick Bratton has tried to pass a law, basically a law to block this landfill, a state law, basically turn the state legislature into planning and zoning for the state. Mike Hafner and Dan Helms are in the House. Well, you could pass a bill through the House rather easily, and they have, that would block this landfill. Rick Bratton, it's one of those things in the state Senate. You can either be the type of senator that passes legislation or kills legislation. Well, Rick doesn't pass a lot of legislation, and so he went. Right, it was funny. Last year he threw a huge fit that nobody could the Senate could not move forward until there was something done to block this landfill. So they put something in the budget that would slow it down, and the governor vetoed it. Well, now Senator Bratton, it's just funny. He won't sign letters to let his constituents be placed on boards and commissions, which, again, it doesn't hurt the rest of the state. It just hurts his constituents. Now he wants the governor to put this back in his actual budget, which I doubt the governor is going to get shanghaied into doing, so we'll see. And then I think you'll see Mike Searpoise came in, a senator that does pass a lot of legislation, and has tried to take over from him. But if you recall, the first inquiry of session was Senator Shore and Senator Bratton talking about their new and improved conservative caucus. And they were saying this isn't going to be here just to tick people off and kill things, but they pretty much talked about how they couldn't stand anybody and all the things they wanted to kill. So if I had to guess, the landfill's best friend is Senator Rick Bratton.
Missouri Times publisher Scott Faughn joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on a very, very chilly mid-Missouri and all of Missouri morning. It sounds like it's that way in Jefferson City as well, John.
You betcha. Scott, is there anybody in the state Senate who isn't considering running for Blaine Luetkemeier's congressional seat?
Oh, man. Probably not, no. I would say Jill Carter down in Joplin. She may be the only one that's officially said she's not running. It will be quite contentious. You know, as time goes on, I think everybody's assumed Bob Onder would run, and I still do, the former senator from St. Charles. I assume he will. If he doesn't, I almost would be confident Nick Shore would run, the man that replaced him in the state Senate. And that'll put an interesting thing. I mean, when you look at the Missouri Mapper, a Twitter account, did this great job on publishing maps. And they kind of broke this race down, as you have the St. Louis folks from St. Charles, a little sliver of Jefferson County, down in the extreme southwest part of it, but really it versus the rest of the district. And if you're from Mocaine, I mean, look, the fact is, do you want a congressman from St. Louis? Do you believe a St. Louisan will care about anyone in Ashland? And if you do, I have some wonderful oceanfront property for you down in West Butler County. You'll love it.
Bob Onder will be joining us at 8:35. He's on the ground in Iowa, and maybe we can ask him about that. But does this improve Holly if he switches from lieutenant governor to the CD3 race? Does this raise the prospects of Holly Rader being our next lieutenant governor?
I think it does. Look, I think when it was Holly Rader versus Dean Plocker, I would have gave Holly Rader, a marginal advantage coming out of the gate on that. Holly Rader's a terrific politician. She's proven she can raise money. The Speaker Plocker, when you're Speaker, you can raise money, but he lost some of that time to raise money with some of the scandals and whatever. I have no idea if he plans on still filing, but let's assume he was. When Bob Onder jumped in, that was 2 men versus 1 woman, and Bob Onder will be an excellent primary candidate. Bob Onder he's got that record of voting against everything that Republican primary voters love. Bob is an outstanding primary candidate. I think better than Speaker Plocker. So if he were to drop out, I think it greatly enhances Holly Rader's chances, unless you see the world shift a little bit and someone like Lincoln Huff jumps in, who would be also a very good, strong primary candidate. He could raise that $2 million that it would take to really probably cement yourself as the leader in the race. I think Bob Onder running for Congress, there couldn't be a better scenario for Senator Rader to become lieutenant governor.
Now, if he jumps in, we also heard on our program last week that Senator Fitzwater is considering a run. I think you mentioned on your show Senator Luetkemeyer. We've also heard who else is in the race? Mary Elizabeth is in the race officially. So there are a lot of names swirling out there. I guess in your mind, do you think it's going to be someone from mid-Missouri or from the St. Louis area after seeing those maps from Missouri Mapper?
Well, there's 2 things. I mean, I'll just tell you, if us folks in mid-Missouri vote for St. Louis and we deserve the government we get, or in this case, don't get, it'll be us doing it to ourselves. There'll be no one else to blame but us. I think rural folks are nice, and we'll vote for someone that doesn't know the difference between a herbicide and a pesticide. And if we could find an 11th toe, we'd shoot that one off too. So if Travis Fitzwater runs, I think he's the best candidate to have a mid-Missouri congressman that actually will know where Hartsburg is. If it's not him, I think Taylor Burks. I I've heard, the Eagles' own Jennifer Bukowski, who I think if she does this, I just want to follow her campaign around. I'd like to volunteer to be the roving, reporter that covers the Bukowski campaign. I think that'd be hilarious and awesome. But look, I think it depends on the quality of candidates Central Missouri can field. And then you're going to have at least 2, maybe 3 from St. Louis. And, again, it just comes back to if you're in Montgomery City and you vote for a congressman in St. Louis that thinks that you actually believe knows where Montgomery City is, well, you're a fool and you deserve what you get.
Do you think there's any chance, Scott, I know you referenced it, if Schroer gets in, I mean, keep in mind that that's a GOP stronghold, St. Charles County. Those folks get out and vote. They have a lot of votes. That's probably the most populous county. Could Schroer, if he gets in, could he win that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Senator Coleman is a talented politician. Jeff County is about 8% of the district. St. Charles County people, though, are transient. Most of them aren't from there, so they might be willing to elect somebody that's not from the district. We make fun of them for a reason. They are goofy. So I think it's totally possible. Nick Shore would do a great job. I think Bob Onder's probably a more polished and practiced candidate. Plus, he's got his brother who could easily fund a congressional race and not miss the money. I think Bob Onder starts off as the favorite just because of that money. If he doesn't, Nick probably starts off as a marginal favorite. But look, guys, sometimes we don't always appreciate our own. Travis Fitzwater would be an excellent member of Congress. He would actually care. He's been creative. He comes up with ideas on workforce development and things that actually matter to folks. Travis would be an outstanding member of Congress and would actually, be able to find Wardsville on a map 2 years from now.
On the other hand, though, Scott, I mean, isn't it fair to say that many of the people listening to this program have shared values with those people in St. Charles who would support an Onder or a Schroer, just in terms of the big picture on a federal level?
I mean, if you're mad, yeah. I mean, our friends in the suburbs, they drive those little electric vehicles while they drink their Starbucks, and they drive around typing on Facebook how mad they are. And if that's your values, you should be a St. Louisan. I would encourage you to move over there. Get you a nice mask you can wear and dodge bullets.
Well, I was a St. Louis, and I know those people very, very well. And I think they actually share many of the limited government, stay out of my life, sort of libertarian, conservatarian values. So from a federal congressional standpoint, I don't know that that's really at odds with the values of people that I know here in mid-Missouri that share those same, don't tread on me values.
Well, I mean, I think you're going to see the members of Congress and the Republican delegation all vote together 95% of the time. I mean, if you want a Matt Gaetz, well, yeah, you should get you a St. Louisan. But I think that if you want folks that'll care about ag, you want folks that'll care about changing the tri-level here in Jeff City and redoing that, you want somebody that'll actually help you finish the job on I-70. I don't think if you need somebody to complain, you call a St. Louisan.
Yep.
You want somebody to get something done, I'd call an old boy like Travis Fitzwater.
Right.
But that's just me. I'm just a simple.
No, you're right. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is, can they win in a general in Missouri? Well,
I mean, there won't be a general election in this. It'll be whoever wins this primary.
Name recognition and money. Yeah. All right.
I mean, the Republican will win, just like Emmanuel Cleaver. If he wins the primary, will be the congressman in Kansas City. Right. It'll just come down to what does Central Missouri want? If you want to complain, there's candidates for that. If you want to get something done, there could be candidates for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see as the field widens and expands. It's also interesting, isn't it, how no one had anything negative to say about Blaine Luetkemeyer on his retirement, including Bob Onder. Very, very complimentary.
Gary Nolan.
Except for Gary Nolan. But I mean the people potentially running.
Blaine Luetkemeyer has been a tremendous statesman, an outstanding member of Congress.
Yes.
He's got those Central Missouri good horse sense values. When I think of Missouri and I think of common sense, I think of Blaine Luetkemeyer.
I do too.
The man served this state tremendously. If you care about the University of Missouri, he has delivered for the University of Missouri. He has voted with the Republican caucus. I mean, yeah, again, if you want Matt Gaetz, somebody to go out creeping around dating 16-year-olds, Blaine Luetkemeyer is not your guy. If you want a good Central Missouri common sense guy Blaine Luetkemeyer deserves a statue somewhere. He has served this state incredibly well.
Well, he took a lot of hits and barbs and had to wear that flap jacket against the rhino, accusations. But I think you're right in terms of getting things done for mid-Missouri and for rural Missouri. He did a great job. Scott, we're out of time, or else I'm going to get in trouble by not allowing Hannah her due time on her, and if I do that,
you're already
you don't know what's happening. I'm sorry. Scott, look forward to talking to you next week, brother.
All right. Talk to you all later. Have a good week.
All right, there he is, Scott Faughn. Coming up, What's Hot with Hannah? It's Cut me some slack.
Stephanie actually sent me today's What's Hot with Hannah story last night, and it made me almost throw up in my mouth a little bit. I, as a true Midwestern, I'm a big fan of ranch dressing, right?
Oh,
it's
are
like,
you?
It's like a Midwest stereotype. We like our ranch dressing. And last year we saw Hidden Valley Ranch do some weird collaborations. Like there was an ice cream that was made. There's all sorts of like clothing items with the Hidden Valley like logo on it that were popular last year.
Huh.
But I think we've gone too far now.
Why's that?
Burt's Bees.
Oh.
Pretty well known for their chapstick is the first thing I think of.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. They did a collaboration with Hidden Valley Ranch.
Ooh.
And the 4 flavors that they came out with were...
Are they flavors or scents?
Oh, that's a good point. The 4 that they came out with were fresh carrot, Hidden Valley Ranch, of course, buffalo sauce, and crunchy celery.
In Burt's Bees lipstick products?
Like chapstick. Yeah, lip balm.
They do other things, but they base it on like honeycomb wax, on beeswax.
Yeah, but like when you always wanted like a sugar cookie like lip gloss so you smelled good, but can you imagine like you get too close to somebody and they've got buffalo chaps?
John just texted me. He's really disappointed. security matters internationally, and I wanted to discuss with you sort of the foreign entanglements, and I mean that in the broadest sense of the word. Funding Ukraine now, for how many months and years? This is the 100th day after October 7th, the 100th day anniversary of the October 7th massacre in Israel. That conflict's going on, and of course the Yemeni thing with the U.S. and U.K., attacking Yemeni outposts at the end of the week. Some retaliation overnight. It seems like Biden has got himself into a bunch of different, one way or another, battles, whether it's kinetic or whether it's material and monetary support. It's a different world than what I think most of us saw and experienced under Donald Trump. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a mess. I think you summarized it well. We've got a lot of challenges facing the United States. I think when I look at this, I see, obviously, this is without saying, weak leadership from Washington. In many ways, has helped contribute and caused a lot of this. I think supply chain issues that the Houthis now, the Red Sea, you're talking about 40% to 60% of the world's oil going around the Horn of Africa there, and now they can sit and take pot shots. And that, one thing a lot of people don't understand is that it goes back to a long-standing 50-year-plus civil war in Yemen that was a proxy war between the Saudis and the Iranians, and now we're dragged into that. And then the other thing I was going to tell you and Stephanie, Randy, is that we have something like 33 to 45 active hot wars in the world today. So even though we normally have 25, 30. Those numbers are ramping up. And I heard a great metaphor the other day that, the kind of period we're living in is a lot like prior to World War II and the Japanese invading Manchuria in 1931, taking on the Chinese in 1937. All these little micro wars might end up running together at some point and combining for one big conflagration. So, yeah, it's not good, and what makes it even worse is the difficult situation with virtually no leadership from the nation's capital, in my opinion.
Kurt, with your many years at Westminster, heck, 20 or so in the Churchill Institute that you were instrumental in starting up there, we see so many of the national news stories now about especially students in the Ivy League protesting pro-Palestinian and all that. Are they getting it on the world situation? And obviously, you would hope college kids would be the cream of the crop on paying attention to this stuff.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, because university education has gone from, empirical, factual, looking at history. Also, I think even within the parties, there were strong divides on isolationist foreign policy versus globalist foreign policy. And clearly, even though I'm taking a pot shot at the president, there are folks within his side of the house that are very pro-Israel and trying to hold the tide back. But certainly, something has transpired that has led toward kind of a demonization of one side or one approach versus another. And if you want to just talk pure politics on the university campus, I'm an academic dean. We had at one point in the 1970s, I think, for every liberal on the campus, there were 3 to 2 conservatives. And now in most disciplines, it's well over 100 to 1 in many disciplines. So liberals to conservatives. So I think there's definitely a call for a reset. I hope watching what's transpired with this anti-Semitism on the campuses is a wake-up shock call to most of America, including the old liberals who were always battling progressives on the campuses in terms of ideological things, et cetera. So I'm hoping we'll get a reset and a little more balance back in the academy to that point, which is a good one.
And Kurt, it's just amazing as you watch the landscape of the protests and how these people who claim to be against the violence in Gaza and Israel needs to stand down, we see protesters vandalizing the security fence around the White House over the weekend. House Republicans are planning to press federal agencies to punish workers who threaten to walk out, including some of those in the White House on Biden's stance in support of Israel. So there's political calculus here that is weighing probably increasingly heavily on Biden and the Democrat campaign. And then we see South Africa on the international level pressure to bear on support for Israel, claiming turning them into the world court on genocide. There's a lot of pushback against Israel's action against Hamas.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Randy. I am I'm not a lawyer, but taught international law for quite a few years there at West Mo, and I'm a little surprised Israel even decided to take on the case at The Hague. I know Stephanie's an attorney, and she may want to weigh in, but the reality is I think that was more of a PR move by the Israelis. But by the same token, to your point, here's a nation that was invaded on October 7th. 1,200 of their citizens were murdered. 30-some-odd Americans were murdered or taken hostage. And now here's Israel in the dock for genocide. It makes absolutely no sense. It's just another example of anti-Semitism. And, there's no doubt that Israel's methods at times are a little bit overbearing. Everybody admits that, but they also see when you have a terrorist organization that has literally built an armed camp, putting weapons and munitions and missiles under mosques, under schools, under preschools, under houses. They put their own citizens' lives at risk. And I don't see any other way at this point other than the military of Israel to go in and uproot the entire Hamas operation before getting it back to a more pastoral, stable Palestine.
So zooming out just a little bit, I was looking at the topics covered in your book, Contextualizing Security, and it looks like you cover a wide array of security issues. But being kind of someone who's an expert in that field and studies that field, what keeps you up at night personally? What do you think is the biggest threat to our nation's security?
Well, my biggest concern, Stephanie, that's a good question, is, and one we didn't really deal with very much in that book, is nuclear. I get very concerned because, one, we all know that if Iran, indeed, who's working toward an active nuclear program, North Korea has an active nuclear program, even when you hear American presidents say they're threatening, as Eisenhower had done in the 50s, even Trump did, to use the nuclear threat, even in a limited sense, that's when you start to see, in my mind, alarm bells go off. We need to be concerned. And I think when you have a war like the one in Russia and Ukraine going on, and you have Russia as the number 2 nuclear power in the world, and Putin backed into a corner threatening to use nukes, that's what keeps me up at night. I think a lot of people think, well, we're in the United States. Yeah, ICBMs might be able to get to the West Coast or something. But I'm thinking more of the regional. If China and India were to get into nuclear war, if India and Pakistan, Islamabad to Delhi is Columbia to St. Louis is 120 miles. And they say if a nuclear exchange started between those two countries, 10 million would be dead within a matter of minutes. So that nuclear would be the big one that does keep me up. And I always showed the genesis of our nuclear program to my students at Westminster. At Spalding, I teach doctoral courses now, but we still talk about at the graduate level about the threats that could be existential to a country like the United States.
We're talking with Kurt Jefferson, who, as you mentioned, John, was really so important in the Churchill organizations, and of course the Churchill Museum being over at Fulton. So I have to ask you the question, Kurt: what would Churchill do? WWC do? In these times? How if he was leading the West and their response to all of the turmoil across from Taiwan to Ukraine to the Middle East? What WWCD?
I think he would do, and this is where I would give Biden semi-props. I wouldn't give him full props. On Israel, I think he would do exactly what they're doing. I think he would say, keep fighting the fight. Try not to kill or injure civilians. I do think he would take a totally different tack in Ukraine. I think he would have settled this a long time ago and said, let's get back to the status quo antebellum. Russia is a superpower, or at least militarily in their own sphere of influence. They're not necessarily superpower vis-a-vis the United States. And as I've said before, Randy, talking with you, their economy is the size of the state of Florida, but is 14 times bigger than Ukraine's economy. He would say, get to the bargaining table, let Russia have the eastern half of Ukraine and get back to where we were prior to the war and end this thing. 200,000 have died. And then with China, I think he would be willing to talk tough, but continue to say, you stay out in East Asia and have your sphere of influence. We'll have our sphere of influence in the West and Europe.
And as we look ahead to this election season, Kurt, I mean, we have various stances on our involvement in various ways overseas related to the various conflicts you've mentioned. Some are more in the isolationist camp, Vivek Ramaswamy probably leading the charge there. Others more Nikki Haley being accused of being a rhino and a neocon. What's the right calibration there? Not so much from a political sense, but there are a lot of people, of course, that support, the Republican movement, but they're very, very staid on their concern about our involvement almost anywhere. What should America's role be? Big brother, cop on the street, or just withdraw and wait for the missiles to come across the New York harbor?
Well, I don't think it's the latter. I wouldn't support, a 1930s Taft of Ohio isolationism. I think that will lead to issues. On the other hand, I think, the Teddy Roosevelt approach, the speak softly, carry the big stick, hold back, don't get too caught up in foreign entanglements. That was kind of our foreign policy for 100 years at the beginning of the Republic in the 19th century. We weren't too engaged in the world, but we were engaged enough to have diplomatic relationships. But I do think when you look at what Donald Trump was attempting to do with regard to foreign policy, he was talking tough. He was willing to back it up, but yet not be too much engaged into a point of spending too much of the GDP on defense and foreign policy. So I think it's Reagan light to a certain extent, but it's not completely something that says we're going to have step up globalism. And I think you also have to be willing to challenge the global institutions slightly, given what we're watching the treatment of Israel. I mean, I think Israel's a strong ally in the Middle East. I know. There is, to John's question, there's a lot of backlash even in our own country saying, why do we put all this money into Israel, et cetera? But we also work with Israel for a lot of other reasons, not just diplomatically, but militarily and security-wise.
And scientifically as well. They are among the leaders in scientific and healthcare advancement, too. Kurt Jefferson,
absolutely,
co-editor, along with your former colleague at Westminster, Tobias Gibson, of Contextualizing Security, a reader, which is a fabulous read for those of you who really want to understand
was standing about it's colder than a well digger's butt.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Colder than a gold digger's heart.
Oh.
Colder than a brass toilet seat on the shady side of an iceberg.
Ouch.
So cold the dogs are sticking to the fire hydrants. It was so cold I chipped my tooth on my soup. It was so cold even property taxes were frozen. It was so cold Grandpa's teeth were chattering in the glass on the counter. And this one attributed, but not positively, to George W. Bush. It's so cold Bill is actually sleeping with Hillary.
Ooh.
And now that you know the rest of that story.
Oh, wow. Hey, that's the ultimate compendium of It's So Cold That. Isn't it great?
I saw some really
Close.
amazing pictures this weekend of weird, beyond the beers, like exploding, freezing at the Chiefs game, like people with like ramen and stuff
Yes.
outside that was totally frozen with like noodles and a spoon in the air. Did you see that one?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone has seen videos of folks throwing boiling water in the air and it instantly freezing.
You can find an old one on the KWS.com site.
Yeah, this one took it a step further and they had a bowl of ramen noodles and they twirled some noodles around their fork and lifted it up in the air and held it for a few seconds and it stayed there when they let go of the fork.
That's crazy.
If Hunter did that, he could call it modern art and get about $500,000 for one of those sculptures.
Certainly. One of our favorite things to do, and we didn't manage to do it this weekend, and we should have, you can put water in balloons and put like a couple drops of food coloring and throw them out and they freeze, and then you rip the balloon.
Stephanie, looking forward to the Iowa caucuses.
Can't wait.
John, you too looking forward to the caucuses.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what transpires, and I'm wondering about the turnout.
And
if
we can't.
The dangerous wind chills are going to keep folks away, but it is Iowa.
And Hannah, here's what Donald Trump had to say about it. I mean, he's got an opinion.
I'm watching even the newscast today. They're saying the Trump voter has so much more spirit, dedication. They say they'll walk over it last, that the Trump voter's coming to vote.
Well, there you go. It looks like it's a done deal from Donald Trump's standpoint.
I mean, he's not really wrong, though. I remember I got to see him in person, I think only once in my life so far. And it was at CPAC. And he was the sitting president. And, I was like, I'm here, I'll go. But but they took everything. I was kind of cranky about it. I think I had like a $1 bill and a chapstick and my ID. The security was insane. And I had to get there like 4 hours in advance of his talk, and then he was 2 hours late. And so I'm cranky by that point. I think people in that audience, and you couldn't leave, right? If you left, they wouldn't let you back in. And I think people in that audience were wearing adult diapers because,
really?
Oh, I think so. And they were happy to do so.
Do anything for Trump.
I think so. I think so. And there were two ladies behind me, and they were like all dressed up, and they were just like vibrating with energy. I mean, they were just like so excited. And I think one of them was like, I feel like I could just like combust or like start on fire or said something crazy. And I like turned around and I'm like, are we okay here? But when he spoke, they just ate out of the palm of his hand. I mean, they were the excitement was something I've never seen in my life before.
Isn't it funny, though, that us conservatives criticize Barack Obama and his followers as a cult of personality? Look at Donald Trump. That's a cult of personality if I ever saw one.
But Stephanie's brings up a very good point, and the base will show up in the temperatures. I think the weather will be something we definitely watch over the weekend. I noticed on television, Governor DeSantis' mother was going door to door as she was urging people to go out. But we're talking about maybe 30 degrees below zero. There's a lot of snow on the ground. To put it in perspective,
Mama DeSantis putting in work.
Yes, in the cold. I talked to State Representative Danny Busick over the weekend, who's from Newtown, not far from the Missouri-Iowa border. And it would be less than what they have in Iowa. But as of Saturday, he told me they had 12 inches of snow on the ground in North Missouri and drifts of up to 2 feet. So it's even higher than in some parts there in Iowa. So it is going to be, again, it's all about getting out their base. There's one other thing I think is interesting that nobody's pointed out yet. The NFL, because of the storm in Orchard Park, New York, for the Buffalo Bills, moved the NFL playoff game to 3:30.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about that, figure a 3-hour game, there's no way Norah O'Donnell's going to make it on the CBS Evening News, and I doubt there'll be any local news at all. That would be unheard of. In a prior age to cut out and to preempt Walter Cronkite. They would never do that for a football game. I don't care how important the football game is. But it's just, I find that very interesting. Why wasn't that game played at 1:30? I'm baffled by the time.
I think it emphasizes the erosion in market share for legacy media.
And that people, I also maybe think people are more concerned about the Bills and the Steelers than they are about the caucuses. I mean, that is and I'm not saying that
more money riding on it.
And that really speaks about people's
Well, Taylor Swift's not at the caucuses either.
No, she's not. But
I mean, people's priorities. I saw the frustration. I know a mom in Iowa, and I saw her frustration. She said, temps are -17, but feel like -39.
That's
she
right.
said the snow is covering all the roads, huge drifts. My road hasn't been plowed in 2 days. There's ice under the roads, making them very slick. And she was criticizing the local schools because they were still having sport wrestling and basketball. And she said, so people are getting out for these sporting events. But I saw
Iowa, though.
Yeah.
But I saw that from her yesterday, and I thought, yeah, I mean, from just a regular mom who's not super involved in politics, whose road hasn't been plowed for 2 days, it's -17. I'm not, and she said, I'm not getting out. Are these type of people who I would want to be getting out, are they going to be getting out to the caucuses? I don't know.
Well,
you ever been to Iowa, though? You ever been to Iowa? They don't stop wrestling or high school basketball for anything.
I've been to Kirksville, which feels like Iowa.
It does. and the other thing about Missouri, years ago, the Missouri and John certainly remembers this. You would have situations where you'd have snow during the morning, but then it would clear in the evening. they'd play basketball, then it would snow again overnight. That got a lot of controversy. That's pretty much not allowed anymore. Look, I know that football game is important between the Bills and the Steelers, and there's a lot of interest in it. I'm simply saying that the caucuses to me are more important. Football game's fine. I just don't understand why you don't play it at 1:30 so you'd have the CBS Evening News, because people that watch that channel are, unless this game is a record pace, they're not going to see what's going on. So, that's just I'm baffled at the timing on that. And furthermore, the NFL that I grew up with never played wild card games on Mondays to begin with. This one is different because they had a storm, but the Buccaneers are playing tonight too, which is very odd.
Brian's really worked up over this. Where are our priorities here? Well, Brian,
our priority should be.
Are you upset at the infatuation with this?
Friends in low places where the
Taylor Swift. Yesterday on Saturday on the Chiefs game where she's doing this kind of, what is that? Is
Swag
that Chiefs?
surfing.
What is that?
That's a song.
Yeah, I noticed Tony Dungy had some interesting comments. Tony Dungy of the former
Tony
coach.
doesn't like it. The Taylor Swift distraction.
He feels like, and it's not just specifically her, but he's talking about in general that these networks are focusing on stuff like that and not focusing on X's and O's. He's frustrated by it. Made that very clear.
Oh. I think he's poopy pants.
There's a clip going viral on the Reels and the TikTok, and I think it's Willie Gay who's sitting on the bench and says, "Text upstairs that we need swag surfing." And apparently it's a song that gets them hyped. And then you can see the whole Chiefs bench down below getting super hyped, dancing along to this song. So it must be kind of like a team rallying song. And then you see Taylor Swift and Donna Kelsey doing this surfing whatever.
She also at one point opened up the little sliding glass window to their press box and was high-fiving the fans, except it wasn't a high five, it was a high four for Rice. He's number 4, he's a rookie, and he had a really good game.
Yeah.
And so she was giving everyone high fours, and I thought that was so cute.
I think it's a good thing. I mean, I hope
sold a lot more tickets.
Yeah, he sold a lot more tickets. And let's be honest about it. Even when you look at the concerts of whether it's Taylor Swift or anyone else, concerts these days are not what they were a couple of decades ago. 3 decades ago, 4 decades. When I was in the music business, you went to see Blood, Sweat, and Tears or Chicago or Tower of Power, and you saw the band perform. And yeah, they may have colorful outfits. They may do this or that. It wasn't about lasers and pyrotechnics. So it just seems as though Americans increasingly need more and more bells and whistles and bright, shiny objects because we're all distracted by we all have collective ADD now, right? And so we need more stimulation. That's what's going on.
I don't know. I understand where you're coming from. In the Swift thing,
I'm not justifying it. I'm describing it. I'm not sure I agree with it.
Well, and I think what the thing is, there's just less attention on this. Like I said, this caucus. I mean, I think it's a really big deal, and you're going to have a third of the audience that are watching the evening news that most likely are going to miss it altogether. And they're more concerned about a football game.
If I was going to watch an evening news, I would not watch Nora O'Donnell on CBS. I'm sorry. I mean, that's about as left as you can get.
Well, and
at least Walter Cronkite cloaked his leftness.
And of course, Walter Cronkite was inducted into the Hall of Famous Missourians. He was.
Well, and if Taylor Swift was invited to a caucus, I'm not sure she'd be caucusing with us, which I think is why a lot of listeners have struggled with when we talk about Taylor Swift. But I would say, I not growing up in the time of Princess Diana, I never really got the royals. I know Hannah kind of follows the royals or whatever, but they've never really had that thing for me. But she's leaning out the window and someone tweeted out and she's high-fiving everyone and greeting people and being so kind. And someone tweeted out and they said, it's giving people's princess. And in thinking of it in those terms, it really it's almost like a royal of America. I mean, it's crazy. And it's something I don't quite get. But at the same time, the fact that she has so much money and so much fame and it still seems kind of relatable, like one of us, and is still seemingly so humble and kind to those around her, I think I'm all for it.
Well, and it's been really cool to see for her Chiefs gear for these games that she's going to, she's supporting a lot of small businesses in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Which has been super cool. Her and Brittany Mahomes both on Saturday had these like parkas made out of Chiefs jerseys that blew up on the internet, and it was a TikTok creator. And like this TikTok creator has now exploded to fame because Taylor Swift and Brittany Mahomes wore jackets that she had made for them for the game. I think that stuff is super cool.
When I see the evolving romance and the symbolism with her attire between her and Travis Kelce, it harkens back to Olivia Fig Newton-John and John Travolta in the movie way back when.
You're the one that I want.
Right? In Grease. Right? I mean, it's good to see a gal supporting her guy. I like that. That feels good. That's traditional American romance. I think, and she's a star in her own right? But she's all about the guy. I think that's good. And he's
all about her.
And he gazes up at her box once in a while, right? I mean, he's up looking at her through the window. I think that's romantic. It's good to see.
And her defenders point out too, and we should point out that she's not the one that's putting the television camera on herself. Those networks are doing that. She has no say. So I mean, people are the ones that are criticizing are saying they don't want to see her. I've seen that a lot on several people on Twitter, but a lot of people defend her. But she's not the one putting the camera on.
You do think she's cute, don't you, Hauswirth?
She's very talented. I'm more into the X's and O's on a football game. But it's fine showing her. It is, and it's newsworthy. She's there.
But let's just be clear. Eminem was like somewhere this weekend, and they're like, Eminem's at the game. And forever, if there's famous people in the audience, they always, I mean, they don't show as much, but they always show her. And especially men, they show other men all the time, and you never think about it. In fact, that one sportscaster got in trouble because they were panning to people's girlfriends. Remember that?
Brett Musburger. Brett Musburger said boys in Alabama start throwing the football in the backyard. But I go back to Sugar Ray Leonard when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard fought Thomas Hearns in Las Vegas in about 1980, and Howard Cosell, the intro was Richard Pryor, straight off the Cannonball Run. He went through the list of the actors that were there. So it's been done before.
Well, yeah,
it's
and remember,
maybe this is a little
at
different.
NBA games, they're always showing. If it's the New York Knicks or if it's out in LA, they're always showing all the Jack Nicholson and whoever else is there.
Spike Lee always with the Lakers.
Yeah. So I think it's good. It adds a little bit of a new dimension to the game. It's good to see. All right, when we come back, we're going to find out how the markets are looking on this Monday ahead of the opening bell. And Bob Onder, who is currently running for lieutenant governor,
You have to hear, and I don't know that we have time for it here, what was on my bill when I was out in California. It was actually
He's on the ground in Iowa today, keeping an eye on the caucuses. Where are you, Bob? Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Randy. Great to be back. I am in Des Moines right now. I think the overnight low was 13 degrees, wind chill minus 35. I'm in my hotel room at the Holiday Inn right now, and there's a layer of ice on my windowsill on the inside. So it's been chilly, but there's palpable enthusiasm in the air, and we're excited to be here.
So enthusiasm for who? I mean, I know you just got in yesterday, and we're hearing from the mass media that, it's everyone's all in for Trump. Are you seeing other people at the hotel or around town? You seeing any other enthusiasm for the other candidates?
Yeah, I have run into some folks who are fans of Governor Ron DeSantis, and of course I'm up here as a Trump surrogate, but I really do admire Ron DeSantis. I really like a lot of the things that Vivek Ramaswamy are saying, but really Trump and DeSantis folks are the folks I'm seeing the most. I've really not run into any Nikki Haley folks yet, although I'm sure there are some. I have sseen some Nikki Haley ads on TV.
Senator, we appreciate you joining us and appreciate you really giving us a report, because you're there on ground zero, can really tell us what's happening. I know, obviously, a lot of the focus is on the politics, but I want to talk about the weather and the impact on that. Yeah. Describe what you're seeing as far as snow on the ground, the cold, and Senator, how do you see the turnout tonight with the weather, and how are the roads?
Yeah, good point. Back home, I think we only got about an inch of snow. What was it, Saturday? Here they got something like 18 inches. The snow is really, at places, is piled up as high as 5 or 6 feet. There's a packed layer of snow everywhere. Only really the major highways and the runways were completely clean. Again, it is bitterly cold. Literally, you walk to your car and your feet are hurting from the cold just in that very short walk. In terms of turnout, there may be an impact. Some are commenting that that older voters, maybe with mobility problems, this might deter them, and that maybe that'll hurt Donald Trump. I'll tell you, Donald Trump's number one demographic supporting him are farmers, and Iowa farmers are tough as nails. They're used to this kind of weather. They'll be out. So I suspect the turnout will be maybe down modestly, but I think there will still be a good turnout.
Bob Onder joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on the ground in Des Moines, trying to stay warm with his Nanook of the North fur coat. You got a fur coat, Bob, or is that off limits now these days?
I don't have anything against fur. Actually, Allison has some fur trim on her coat. But no, I have a very warm coat, and then I have an overcoat to go over the sport coat. But I'm not. I could use a fur coat right now. That's for sure.
Dr. Bob, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about the political side of it on your race, as you announced for lieutenant governor. Any interest in replacing Blaine Luetkemeyer?
Well, I do have some interest. I'm definitely looking at that. I believe I could make an impact in the lieutenant governor position. At the same time, who we send to Congress at this critical time in our country's history is very, very important. I mean, look, we have seen in the last year under Joe Biden the cost of living for the average family increasing by $11,000. We've seen energy prices go up. We've seen the cost of buying a home skyrocket. We've seen our kids besieged with poisonous ideologies like critical race theory and gender ideology. We've seen our nation become less respected abroad and the world more dangerous than ever. And it's really time we take this back, whether it's by taking back the White House or by sending the right people to Congress. So I think it's really important. I'm only one person. I can only run for one office, but we definitely are looking at that congressional seat.
Bob, earlier we talked with Scott Faughn, and he really raised, I think, some hackles in the studio, or at least got our attention when he said that really whether Bob Onder, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, Nick Schroer, pretty much anyone, but maybe a Travis Fritzwater or a Tony Lukemeyer were to run, that folks from that St. Charles area just may not have a lot of interest in looking after the interests of people in mid-Missouri. What would be your response to that? Maybe answering for anyone else who might enter the race, including yourself, that isn't from Central Missouri. Would we be lost in the desert?
Well, that's a silly assertion. I've spent, I practiced medicine in the congressional district for 30 years. I've lived in the congressional district for 20 years. I served the congressional district in St. Charles County for 10 years. By and large, the interests of folks in mid-Missouri are the same as the interests in St. Charles or Jefferson County or down at the lake in Camden County. I have stood by our friends in agriculture time and again, even when the Jeff City establishment, tried to sell them out, like selling Chinese farmland, American farmland to China, or abusing eminent domain by some woke green energy company, taking farmland to ship their so-called green energy through our state. Opposing ridiculous regulations and attacks on animal agriculture. So I think that a congressman from St. Charles County could represent the interests of rural Missouri and central Missouri. And no, I think that's a silly contention.
Senator, I appreciate you answering John's question about, at least you're considering the race, obviously, in. Of course, right now you're focused on what's happening in Iowa, but I do have a follow-up question on what you told John, because you mentioned you're considering it. You and your wife are considering it. Is the filing for these? I don't have the date in front of me. It's going to be late February at Secretary Ashcroft's office, so you don't have a whole lot of time. Do you have a time frame on when you'd like to make a decision whether you would run for lieutenant governor or the Congress?
Yeah, I think that decision would be the next week or two.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, we know you've got a lot of work being a surrogate for Trump in the Iowa caucuses today, and I'd like to check back with you after this fallout occurs, because a lot of people have said this is going to be it if DeSantis or Haley don't show some significant showing, or maybe Ramaswamy thinks he's going to show some, that it's all over but the shouting. We'll have to see how the feelings of the caucus goers, and especially whether this never Trump sentiment that we hear about from various others in the party, whether that's going to still hold or whether there'll be a coalescence. That's a big question on my mind. We hope that maybe we can ask that of you the next time we chat.
That sounds great.
All right, Bob. Hey, good luck in the cold weather up there. Stay warm and stay safe, my friend. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Randy, I would point out it was a great interview. Really, I thought learned a lot there about the weather, and I'm interested too in what he's going to decide. The Iowa, and you bring up a very good point about, if someone has a poor performance or whatever, and of course turnout's going to have a lot to do with potentially how many people show up at the polls. I mean, I believe he mentioned 18 inches of snow. When I talked to Danny Busick in North Missouri, he was at 12, so clearly more. That could impact, especially if they're older people that don't have a way to get there. But as he mentioned, farmers, we're going to find a way to get there nonetheless. So he's confident about President Trump. I would just point out one thing. That Iowa is it's had a little bit of an independent streak at times. And I would reference, for people who forget, 1988. 1988, George Herbert Walker Bush ended up winning. By the way, he was 17 points down at one point to Governor Caucus. He did not win the state of Iowa. It was a guy named Pat Robertson that won the state of Iowa.
I remember.
And the national media was much different in 1988. They Robertson was an interesting, and they covered it, and they did not. I thought they covered it pretty fairly back in 1988. But Pat Robertson kind of faded after that, and you would think that he would have catapulted after that to New Hampshire, but no, he did not. So, and I remember, if I'm not mistaken, Ted Cruz in 2016 won up there as well. So
as I remember,
we've seen some interesting wins over the years up there.
John and Brian, tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember that really W is the last winner in Iowa in terms of the Republican that I can remember forever that actually went on to win the president. Whereas the Democrats tend to, when they win in Iowa, they're much more likely to win nationally.
Yeah, and the Democrats have recently, President Biden has basically said this. They have wanted they don't want Iowa to be at the top. They want it to be a state more like South Carolina in that. But for the Republicans, Iowa, it's always been that way, and particularly if you live in, Stephanie's right, she lived in Kirksville, I lived in Moberly, I lived in Carrollton. There's not a whole lot of difference between North Missouri and Iowa. Its common denominator is agriculture, and they tend to get a little bit more snow and things like that. But they elected Tom Harkin for years up there to the Senate. They definitely are more of a Republican state than they used to. Like a lot of farm states, they've gone very, very, from my looking at it, definitely Republican.
Only 3 presidents since 1972 won their Iowa caucuses when the races were contested: Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush.
Yep.
And they've said that about the early caucuses. They're not necessarily really good predictors, but when you're winning the field there's a new Trafalgar poll out this morning showing Trump up by 52%, and Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are basically neck and neck. And so within the I think they're close enough that the undecided could decide that. So I think it's make or break for one of them today.
You can feel the excitement in Stephanie's voice. She
I am
is
excited.
really jazzed about this. We'll come back and wrap it up with leftovers, and there are a lot of them. We should start out with a tribute to Jane Gephardt, who passed. She was 81, wife of former U.S. House Majority Leader Dick Gephardt. And, of course, those were the days when Republicans and Democrats got along.
At least better than they do now.
Yeah, they got along a lot better. Yeah. And they were real statespeople at that time.
Mm-hmm. So
she had Alzheimer's and had joined in clinical trials before passing Saturday, surrounded by family in Naples, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have, Stephanie?
We made history this weekend because we have our first, what Fox News calls pageant patriot, Madison Marsh. Any relation, John Marsh?
Probably.
Probably. Makes history as the first ever active duty Air Force pilot to win the Miss America title. She was previously Miss Colorado and won it all. So really exciting.
That's good to see.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good to see. What's on your plate of leftovers, John?
Well, there's a safety app that we understand is something, you don't worry about these. It's a safety app for schools, but it turns out that it's been hacked, thousands of documents accessed that contain sensitive information. It's called Raptor Alert, and the kicker on it is both Columbia and Jefferson City Public Schools have their students on this app.
Wow.
So they say it could be some real challenges out there for some of that sensitive information. They're saying the documents access, once again, number in the thousands.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my goodness. Wow. It never ceases to amaze me what the trouble technology can get us into. Now, Hannah, do you have a little bit of your leftover oatmeal left over? I mean, can you show that to people watching?
Seriously.
It's posted on the interwebs.
Oh, man, this stuff, you made some...
What's wrong with it?
It looks like, I think Randy said like a concrete compound, like some sort of construction
it looks
goo.
like super nails. Liquid
Spackle.
nails.
Well, and if you notice, there's some left, and it's because I couldn't quite...
Or catfish bait. I've seen catfish bait
couldn't
look
quite
like
bring
that.
myself to finish it.
It's like a blizzard. You can turn it over and spoon and all. It just is stuck. Why would you put that in your stomach? You're not gonna have a very good day.
Well, it was all right when it was warm, and then it kind of solidified once it cooled down. But
now Hannah shared with me, we were going to talk about caffeine, and I never really got to it. But in this weather, a lot of people will use energy drinks, just like you add a little octane booster to your fuel,
Wait, did you steal that out of the break room refrigerator?
I borrowed it as a prop.
Randy.
So this is just one. This is a skinny can. This is not a big can. This is a how many ounce?
Not a 40.
It's called
this
a
is
slim.
a 12-ounce can, and it has several different sources of caffeine in a so-called energy drink. Clean energy. One says
clean energy.
And it has 200 milligrams of caffeine in this. So that's about the equivalent of 2 8-ounce coffee cups worth.
Not bad.
So that's not bad. But my concern for you, Hannah, because I am concerned about your health and everyone else here in the studio and on the air listening, I'm worried about the artificial sweeteners in here. There's sucralose. There's acesulfame, a very popular one. This is not. You may be getting your energy up, but you're not helping your microbiome.
But
your
it's sugar-free.
Eye roll.
But
Insert eye roll emoji.
Your gut bacteria are not happy.
Well,
They're
okay.
pushing back at you.
I had a
I
had a really healthy breakfast of my protes, as they're called, protein oats. So it's called balance, right?
Well, the Wall Street Journal is saying that you should only have 4 cups of coffee. And this is where I got into a dispute with my doctor, because I go in and she said, how many cups of coffee do you have? And I said, and this is small for me, actually. I said, about, I have 2 cups a day, and I hold up like a jug. And she's like, that is not 2 cups. There's like 4 in one of those.
2 Stanley cups full.
Yeah,
So what they're saying is 4 8-ounce cups.
Right.
So if you get that 20 ounce from your coffee shop, that's, so maybe only 2 big coffees.
And I really do have concerns about the fact that, look, anxiety is out of control in this country. And caffeine is an energizer. It feeds that kind of a mental process.
I'm already on anti-anxiety meds.
So you're with Tucker Carlson, and you should just do Zins all day then, right? Is that it?
Zins?